Hello, Mason here. And in this video, we're going to be talking about forgiveness. You may have seen a recent video. Well, it's not very recent anymore. It might have been a little while back, but I did a video before called "How Do I Know If I've Truly Forgiven Someone?" So if you saw that video, you could say that this video is like a part two, but in this video we're going to dive in to this topic a little bit deeper, and because this video is going to go into what that means for somebody who's had a lot of trauma in their past, or maybe they've had traumatic experiences, maybe they have complex trauma, things like that. So this video is going to be geared towards those people, because for them things are going to be a little bit different. It's deeper, it's more complex. Forgiveness is a more complex issue for them. So, but with that being said, if you would like to watch the part one, which is the video called "How Do I Know If I've Truly Forgiven Somebody?" I'll link that in the description of this video, so you can watch that as well. It explains what is forgiveness, what does it look like, um, what's the process of, what does that process look like, what does that entail, to forgive someone. So so yeah, definitely watch that video. But like I said, if you're somebody who's um, been through a lot of trauma, maybe even complex trauma, stuff like that, then this video is going to be for you. And so we're going to get into some deep stuff here. Um, it gets pretty complex. So speaking about forgiveness, if you try to, I mean, normally, if you try to talk to someone who's been through a lot of trauma about forgiving someone, because of course, Jesus says we should forgive, right? And if we don't forgive, then the Father won't forgive us, right? So forgiveness is a very serious thing. So it's really important to know, have I truly forgiven, right? So, and that's one of the reasons that I've even made these videos and about forgiveness. So when it comes to someone with a lot of trauma in their past, they may be trying to forgive others, because they know they need to, they know they have to, and they may not understand how to do it. They might not even feel like they can do it. Or they may tell Jesus, like, "Hey, Lord, I've forgiven this person. I forgive this person, or this person, or these people, or this group, whatever it may be." They may say it out loud, but they may not feel like they really mean it. They may not feel like they've really done it. And that might feel like a problem. So, um, and if this applies to you, you'll know exactly what I mean. You'll know exactly what I'm talking about here. So you might feel like, I've gone through the motions, I've forgiven, but there's a part of me that still feels all these emotions towards those people or that person. Or it may also feel like, um, it may also feel like there's a part of me that is still offended, still extremely hurt, still has all these emotions and feelings involved, especially when you think about it, right? Or when you think about that person or those people, there may still be anger. There may, when you go to these places in your mind, when you think about forgiving certain people, or whatever it may be, you may notice that there's a lot of anger there. There's a lot of offense there still. There's a lot of, anything like that might still be there. And, but yet you want to forgive. Maybe you want to forgive. Maybe you tell Jesus. Maybe you tell Jesus that you forgive, but yet you just feel like, why does it feel like I'm not really truly able to do it? Like you know. So hopefully you're understanding what I'm meaning when I say those things. But um, yeah, maybe you do it, and it feels like all um, the memories, the thoughts, and emotions try to come back. Maybe after you forgive, maybe all the memories and emotions and things associated with that um, come back, and you feel like you're in a place again where you're angry again, or something like that. So maybe you feel like you're going through this cycle, like I keep forgiving and forgiving this person over and over and over, but for some reason I keep having to go back and forgive them, and I don't understand why. So maybe that's something that applies to you as well. Um, and like I said, it would really benefit you to go back and watch the other video that I did, the previous video I did on forgiveness. How do I truly know if I've forgiven? Because you want to make sure that this is something that applies to you. But I feel like just listening to me explain this, you should know. You should know, because it should be resonating with you. You should feel, as I speak, you should feel like, wow, that really explains how I feel about it. So anyway, so moving on. In order to explain how this works for someone with a lot of trauma, I need to explain I need to explain something first, and I talk a lot about this in my inner healing class, which is actually here on YouTube. I have a playlist here on YouTube on my channel, and it's called the inner healing class. And right now there's 4 parts to the series, but there's going to be many more parts to it. But right now, there's 4 parts to it. So, but I get into this a lot deeper than I'm going to get into it here in this video. But it may be really beneficial for you to check that out too. So I'm going to link that in the description as well, so you can watch those parts of that class. I've got it set up as a playlist. So anyway, so in order to explain how this works to you, I need to explain to you what I call the levels of brokenness. Now, there's many levels of brokenness, and when someone is hurt, when their feelings are hurt, or when they're hurt um, in some way, whether they're abused emotionally, physically, um, verbally, I mean, you name it. When someone is hurt, when something causes a wound, an emotional wound, we call this a soul wound. I call it a soul wound. And if the wound is bad enough, if it's deep enough, it causes a fracture, and we call it a soul fracture. And so your soul is your mind, will, and emotions. So when a soul fracture happens, there's literally a part of your soul that's fractured. And if I call it levels of brokenness, because there's levels to it. So say if it's bad enough, if the fracture is bad enough, that fractured piece can actually be fractured off from the soul. So let me put it this way. This is what happens, and I'll explain more later because this might seem confusing. So when you're a kid, and I always use examples with kids because when you're a kid or when you're a child, you have absolutely no defenses, no coping mechanisms, no defense mechanisms built up to deal with a traumatic thing, something hurtful, something emotionally overwhelming. So because there's no defense mechanism, there's no way to cope. The Lord has given us this gift called dissociation. He's programmed us with that ability. And literally it's a way for the mind to literally escape something while the person still goes through it. The person still is going through the trauma, but the mind escapes. And it's a mechanism that can help somebody deal with something that's way too emotionally overwhelming for the mind to deal with. So basically, what happens is like it's like the person checks out. Um, it's like the person just checks out, and the consciousness of that person during that traumatic event is just not present, even though the person's going through it and everything. The person's still going through it, but the consciousness has checked out and is just somewhere else. Okay. And it's a way to deal with something that is just too much to deal with, too much for the mind to handle, or the mind and the body to handle. Um, so so that's why I always use examples of kids because, like I said, when you're a kid, it's more likely to happen when you're a kid. The dissociation is more likely to happen because as a kid, more something could easily be more emotionally overwhelming than the child can handle. So what will happen is the child will just check out, will dissociate. And so I'm going to explain that a little bit further. So what what happens when dissociation occurs? Let's say what happens when that kid checks out. I always use the example of a child who gets beat, right? So let's use that example. So um, let's say 4, 5, or 6 year old child. Let's say he gets in trouble by dad, and dad whoops him. Dad gives him a whooping, and let's say it's not just a tap on the butt. Let's say it's full blown beating. Let's say it's not. Let's say it's not just borderline abuse. Let's say it's total abuse. It's just he beats him. He gives him a beating. So that child doesn't understand what's happening. The child thinks, why is my dad hurting me like this? This one who's supposed to love me. Why does he hurt me like this? Why is this happening to me? So it's too emotionally overwhelming for that child. So let's say he checks out. Let's say his mind can't handle it, his body can't handle it. Let's say he just checks out. So what happens? What does that mean? What happens? So this is what happens, and this is the best way I know to explain it. So when he checks out, as soon as that starts happening, the in the example, the dad starts beating the kid. Let's say as soon as he starts doing that, boom, the kid checks out. His consciousness checks out. So what happens is it's too overwhelming for the kid's mind. So what happens is the mind, as soon as the mind is triggered by that and realizes, hey, this is too big for me to handle. I can't handle it. The body can't handle it. We got to check out. As soon as the mind decides that, the mind creates another part of itself. And one way to explain this is to use the word splitting, is to use the word split. So the mind will split itself and create another part of itself. So if you can think like that, you can think of it like that. It causes the mind to split. So, and this split would be what we call the fracture. So then, say the mind splits, creates another part of itself. And the reason that the mind creates another part of itself is because the mind creates this other part so that this other part of itself can hold on to and deal with that trauma and that pain and that emotional overwhelm. Okay? So that's what that is. That's the best way, one of the best ways I can explain it. Like so the mind creates another part of itself, and this other part of the mind has a job to do. And the job that it does, the job is to hold on to the memory, to the trauma, the overwhelm, the pain, all of it stays in this other part, and it gets tucked away, filed away in the mind somewhere, in the brain. If you can think of it that way. It gets tucked away in a file. So back to the example of the kid. The dad starts beating. The mind says, "Whoa, this is too much." Checks out. The kid's mind separates or splits, creating another part of itself. This other part of itself, this other part of the mind, takes the trauma, deals with the event, whatever is happening, whatever trauma is happening right now, deals with it, so that the child doesn't have to deal with it because it's too much. So now this other part of the mind that was created to deal with it deals with it while it's happening. Um, Takes all that trauma, all that pain, all that hurt, all the emotion, all of it, takes it, and whenever that traumatic event is over, when it's done, that part goes away, tucks into a file somewhere, and keeps all that stuff there with it, right? And then once that once that traumatic event's over, the child comes back to consciousness, or what we call the core person, or the primary consciousness. The part of the child who lives everyday life comes back to consciousness, and then when he comes back to consciousness, he may not even remember. He may not even know what happened at that point. It just depends. It depends how. Um, it depends how bad the fracture was. It depends on the level of severity. If the trauma was bad enough, it could be um, slight dissociation. Um, it could be mid-level dissociation. It could be full-blown, complete dissociation, and it could be dissociation to the point where um, the person who the traumatic event happened to has absolutely no recollection of it even happening at all. And I call that full-blown, complete dissociation, where where that soul fracture, that part that was created to absorb all that memory, pain, emotion, etc., that part is completely independent of that person's uh, core self, of their primary self, the one who lives everyday life. That that soul fracture, that part of that person's mind is completely independent of that person's core self. So but that part of that person knows what happened. Here, this is what's crazy about it is the part that was created and tucked away with all that trauma, pain, and memory. That part that part of that person knows what happened. All the emotions are still there. The pain's still there. The overwhelm is still there. That part of that person might still, it's almost like that part of that person is stuck, frozen in time. That part of that person can even be stuck at the age that he or she was when it happened. Because when something like that happens, whatever age the person was, it's like that person gets stuck in time with all that pain, all that memory, all that overwhelm, and it's all still there, and it's just as if it's still happening. So that part of that person could literally be holding on to all these emotions along with fear. All those things could be in that part that's filed away, tucked away somewhere. And it's like it's frozen in time and it's still taking place. It's still happening. Even though it could be years and years later. This could be something that happened when somebody was 5 or 6 years old. And now the person is, let's say in their 40s or 50s. And there's a part of them that's 5 years old and tucked away somewhere that's holding on to anger and all the emotions, all the pain, the trauma, even memories. And it could all be things and memories that the core person doesn't even know it's there, doesn't even know the memories exist. You know, it's a possibility that the person doesn't even know the memories are even there. Okay, so and what happens is when and I'm explaining all this because you have to be able to understand this to be able to help somebody truly forgive somebody who's been through things like that. Because let's say that let's say somebody has a let's say somebody who's been abused is trying to forgive somebody, and they can't, and like I explained it earlier in this video. I explained that you don't know why you just can't forgive, or you're trying to forgive and it doesn't seem like it's working. um, you still feel all this stuff, this stuff's there, but you can't necessarily understand what's going on with you. You just know something's going on. there could be a there could be a person, or not a person, but there could be a part of that person inside them. There could be a fractured part of that person, what we call a soul part or an alter part, the part of the mind that was created to do that job, to hold all those memories and pain and everything. We call that part of that person an alter part, or short for alternative personality, alternate personality. So we call it for short an alter part, or I call it a wounded part, because that's essentially what it is. The part's been wounded, and the part has a job to do. And the job is to come forward every time something similar to what created it happens. So So whatever event happened that created that part, that wounded part, whatever caused that split, that fracture, and created this other part that needs to be that is filed away. If that part of that person notices something in the future that is reminds that part of that person of something similar, or if it's something similar to what happened to them that created that part originally, that part of that person will be triggered to come forward. So let's go back to use the example of the kid who got beat by his dad. Let's use that example again. So let's say it happens again a few weeks later. Kid gets in trouble. Same thing happens again. He gets beat. The part of that child that um, absorbed all that trauma when it happened originally, that part is going to be triggered by that event. He's like, "Oh my gosh, it's happening again. We got to check out again." And that part of that child comes back to the surface to deal with that traumatic event again, to take the trauma, the pain, the overwhelm, the emotions, all of it. Take it, and then when it's over, go back into the file again. And then the part of the child that lives every day comes back to the front again. Okay. And that's what we call a trigger. Something can trigger those parts to come forward and do their job, which is to protect or defend, so that the core person doesn't have to deal with it because it's too much. Okay. And when these alter parts, or these wounded parts, are created to do those jobs, they do those jobs forever. They'll keep doing those jobs for that person for their whole life until they're dealt with. And they need to be dealt with Jesus. Jesus needs to come in and heal those parts by taking all of their emotion that they're holding on to, because they hold on to that. All that stuff is permanently in those parts, in those wounded parts, tucked away, and it can't be dealt with until um, Jesus literally has to bring that part of that person up, bring that part of that person up, and deal with that part. And that's what we do in these counseling sessions. That's the inner healing with Jesus that we do. I will go into that part of the session, and I'll ask Jesus to locate the wounded part that he wants to heal. Jesus will bring that part up, and a lot of times that wounded part comes all the way up to the surface. And it's like, and when that happens, it's like I can, let's say it's a 30 plus year old person, and when Jesus brings that wounded part up, all of a sudden it's like talking to a 6-year old. It's because, like I said, that part of that person's stuck in time. That 6-year old's still there, wounded, hurting, feeling everything, experiencing that event like it's still happening. And that wounded part can hold on to unforgiveness. That wounded part needs to forgive. So that's why this is so complex when it comes to um, someone who's been through a lot of trauma. When they try to forgive, it's because a lot of people don't know this stuff, so they don't understand that there's a part of them in there that, maybe whatever age that the traumatic event happened, or events, Maybe it was many, and there could be many parts of them at different ages. Depending on what the person's been through, it could have been a lot of trauma, a lot of different traumas. But um, we have to go in and find with Jesus. We have to go in and find those wounded parts and address those wounded parts and say, what are you holding on to? What are the emotions that you're carrying? How old are you? What emotions are you carrying? What are you feeling? Who are you upset with? Why are you angry? And that wounded part comes up and tells me, and we work through it, and we invite Jesus into it, and that wounded part releases all that, forgives whoever that he or she needs to forgive, releases all that pain, trauma, hurt, memory, all of it, releases it all to Jesus and says, take it, Jesus. I don't want it anymore. And Jesus takes it. And it's like, and when he does, that wounded part, that altar part is no longer needed. So that wounded part gives his or her job to Jesus and says, you do this, you take over now, you defend, you protect, you're in control now. And then whatever triggers that wounded part for that person to come forward, that those whatever those triggering events are, they no longer happen anymore. The person's no longer triggered in that way because Jesus took that over, and that wounded part is no longer there because Jesus healed that part. Okay. So that's what has to happen. Those wounded parts or those altar parts are holding on to unforgiveness. They're holding on to negative emotions, and the person doesn't even know it. The person doesn't even know this is something going on within them. So no wonder they don't know why they can't forgive, right? They don't know why they are still feeling what they're feeling, and they have to forgive over and over and over because the emotions keep coming, and whatever it is, it's because we have to locate the wounded part with Jesus and have him heal it. We have to locate that fractured part of that person's soul. We have to locate that 5-year-old that was hurt, that was abused, or that or that 7-year-old that this or this happened to, or this or that happened to. We have to locate those parts and address those parts with Jesus and get them to trust Jesus, get them to release everything they've been holding on to for so many years, release it to Jesus. And when they do, Jesus heals that part. He binds up the brokenhearted, just like the scripture says. He's closest to the brokenhearted, and he binds up the brokenhearted. He heals those broken, shattered pieces of the soul. And even in the book of Psalms, David in the book of Psalms talks so much about the soul and the soul being shattered, right? Because it happens. It's real. This stuff is real. And psychology knows about this. They know that this dissociation is real. They know this stuff exists. They just want to medicate people for it. But anyway, this is how you get healed. And this is how someone who's been through a lot of trauma, this is how they forgive. It may not be enough for somebody to just say, I forgive so and so. And for some people it can be. For some people that can be enough to say, Jesus, I forgive so and so. I release the negative emotions I have towards that person. I release it. And somebody might go through the process that I've stated in in the other video I made about, how do I know if I've truly forgiven someone? If somebody could go through that and truly forgive, but my reason for even making this video, putting this out there, is because there are times where it's way more complex. Somebody with complex trauma, somebody with DID, somebody with some other kind of um, mental things going on. Um, you know, it can be a lot more complex, and you can't just tell somebody you need to forgive. You can preach that at them all day, and they can say it. They could say they forgive the person till they're blue in the face. Lord, I forgive them. But somehow, some way, somehow, they don't understand it, but it doesn't feel like they've done it. It doesn't feel like they have forgiven them. You know, it's because the wounded part needs to be located through inner healing. The wounded part needs to be located, dealt with Jesus, and healed by Jesus. And there's ways to do that. And I give the method that I use. I give the methods that I use in my books. Specifically, the first book I wrote, which is called Self-Deliverance and Warfare Prayers. You can find it on Amazon. I'll give a link in the description. You can also get it on my website, holyfiredisciples.com. I even have a book bundle available. You can get all 4 of my books for a bundle, for a special bundle price, with free shipping in the States if you live in the US. But anyway, I'll leave all those links in the description. But that's what's going on, and I hope, I really hope and pray that this video was a blessing to someone. Maybe it shed light on something that they didn't realize, maybe they didn't know was going on with themselves, but now, because Holy Spirit brought them to this video, now they understand what's going on, and they understand what they need to do. And you can go through it yourself. You could order my book, Self-Deliverance and Warfare Prayers, and go to chapter 4 and get in the secret place with Jesus and go through the steps. There's practical steps written out. It's the method that I use to walk people through this is in that book. And you could get in the secret place with Jesus, and you could literally, between you and him, you could go through those steps and take care of that. And of course, reach out. I have me and a team of ministers on the website, holyfiredisciples.com. I'll leave, if you feel like you need a session, if you feel like you need help with that, reach out. holyfiredisciples.com. Go to that website and find where it says book a session, and find out how to book a session with either me or one of the ministers on my team, and we'll walk you through it. And we'll teach you, not only will we walk you through it, but we'll teach you how to do it so you can do it on your own. Okay? So I'll leave that all these links I'll leave in the description. But if this is you, like I said, there's hope for you. You can be healed. Jesus will heal all of your brokenness. If you're fractured, if you're extremely fractured, he will heal all of your wounds, all the fractures. He will make you whole. He can, and he will, and he loves to, and he's ready and willing to do it. So anyway, I pray this video was a blessing, like I said, and I just pray that this shed light on things for you. And now you know what's going on. Maybe you didn't know what was going on, but now you know. And praise God for that. And maybe because of that, now you know what your next steps are. Praise God. So yeah, like I said, that was my reason for making this video, is because someone with a lot of trauma It's going to be different for them. It's going to be different. You can't just, they may not be able to just forgive like, like someone else can. Some people need this. It's way more common than you think. Way more common. Anybody who ministers inner healing and deliverance, anybody who does that can tell you this is a lot more common. Anybody who deals with this kind of thing in inner healing and deliverance ministry, they'll be able to tell you it's way more common. But anyway, go check out the inner healing class. I'll leave the playlist link down below as well. Go check that out. There's even session number 4, session 4 or part 4, whatever you want to call it, of the inner healing class. I actually minister the method that I take people through. I actually minister that method in part 4 of that class. But don't just go to part 4 and go through that. Go through all the parts. You're going to need to know everything leading up to part 4. You're going to need to know all that stuff. Okay. But anyway, I encourage you to do that. Take that whole, watch all 4 parts, and go get the books. And if you need help, if you need a session, reach out. Go to the website and reach out to us. We'll help you. We'll help you. Okay. All right. Without any further ado, God bless you, and let me know in the comments if this was a blessing for you. Let me know how the Lord used this video to bless you. And make sure to like the video. Make sure to like it so YouTube continues to recommend it for people on their feeds, on their YouTube feeds, and related videos. Make sure to like it so YouTube keeps suggesting it, pushing it out there. And share it. Share the video with somebody who you know that would be blessed by this or needs to know this. Yeah. Thank you for sharing. Thank you for liking. Thank you for subscribing. Subscribe if you haven't. Subscribe if you haven't. There's going to be a lot more to come. Subscribe to this channel if you have not already. But anyway, leave a comment. Give me some feedback. I'd love to hear it. God bless you, and I'll see you on the next one.